Hey Jennifer, what do you think about the bills being proposed by lawmakers regarding embryos?
Hey Courtney, I bet it's because they figured out that all these embryos start out as females, so they want to make laws that control their destiny. Welcome to MILF,
I'm Courtney,
and I'm Jennifer.
and we are two moms into literary freedom. And that is why men have nipples.
We talked about this in an episode before, right?
Anytime I get the opportunity to talk about why men have nipples, I take it. Because it's
And I
true.
do like reminding men that they started out as women.
Yeah, I mean, why else do they have nipples?
And then they,
Nipples are not there for male's pleasure. They're there to provide nourishment for babies. So, but it's like you forget that. Like they
Yeah.
forget that, Which reminds me to, since, it is, what is it? Is March technically like Women's History Month?
Yeah,
Technically?
women's history, right?
Yeah, it's hard because, there's so many different groups of individuals that need representation. And so we try to cover books that like kind of, relate to that theme.
Yes.
So that's why this episode we're covering The Handmaid's Tale in honor of Women's History Month. And tomorrow is International Women's Day.
Oh, I didn't know that was tomorrow.
Yeah, March 8th.
Okay.
You know how I remember that? When I was in second grade, I had a boyfriend,
In second grade?
Yes,
Scandalous.
which is ridiculous, I know. But, I was like, oh, we're going out, but whatever. Anyway, his birthday was March 8th.
Oh my God.
I don't know how I remember that. And I remember, we would always tease him that he was born on International Women's Day.
That's funny.
I know.
I can't even remember my kids' birthdays sometimes. I can, but I have to think
Yeah.
about it,
You have that useless information
Yeah.
that has been burned in your brain.
And you can't forget it no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, it's that. Anyway, so
Happy birthday to Courtney's second grade boyfriend.
Yep. So in honor of International Women's Day, it's kind of I've been thinking about sexism and feminism and just how women are treated in general and all that. And, there's a lot to talk about with this book, Handmaid's Tale, because, it's not all men are evil, women are good. It's not as cut and dry or black and white as that. There are some evil women and there are some amazing men.
Exactly.
And my spouse, he likes to joke around. He's like, you're a man hater. I'm like, if I'm a man hater, why am I with you? But anyway, so I'll tell you a story about this. This happened to me this morning. I was walking to the bus stop with my kids because usually we drive because it's at the end of the dirt road. But we have all this construction going on at our house right now. In our road, because they're finally putting in city water, because we've been living on well water for the past 10 years and it's been terrible. So all that construction has been going on. And so every morning I walk by this big group of burly construction men, and then, we don't really talk to each other. It's
right.
You don't look at them, they don't look at you. It's because it's just me and the kids.
Right.
And so this one morning, it's been day 5. So I feel they're okay, we're gonna be a little bit more friendly now.
Right.
Which is weird, but
we're gonna be here for a few more days.
Let's
meet the locals.
It's a 9-month project.
Oh shoot!
So they're probably But anyway, the biggest, burliest guy with the biggest beard. Okay, is hey. I'm like, hey.
What's gonna happen now?
He's like, I saw what you did the other day.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh shit, what did I do? And he's like, when you flipped off that motorcycle.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, yeah, you saw that. He's like, yeah, I just wanted to tell you I thought it was really cool.
Nice. Okay. Not where I thought it was going to go. I like it.
And so the other guy next to him was like, what? Why did she flip off the guy in a motorcycle? He's like, well, there was this big guy in a Harley and he had his wife on the back. And as soon as she got, to the edge of the road, he revved his engine real loud and it made her jump, because I was what I was wearing. This is my fault because it was what I was wearing. It's my responsibility.
Of course, it's your fault. Yes.
So I was wearing leggings and one of those tight athletic tops.
You slut.
I know. I mean, I brought it on I was asking for it.
You were asking for it.
I was asking for that motorcycle to be revved at me. It was so loud. I hate it.
And his wife was on the back?
His wife was on the back. And so I was picking up the kids in the afternoon. So the bus hadn't arrived yet. In my defense, I did not flip off a motorcyclist with my kids. Have I done it before? Maybe. But this time I didn't. My kids were not there.
Hey, I'm on board with showing our kids how we treat disrespectful men.
Exactly.
They know.
Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. So, like, this guy, this construction man, I'm telling you the story because, like, he's a feminist.
Yeah.
And they exist. And not all men are evil.
And sometimes in the place you least expect it.
Yeah. It was such a funny experience. And so, of course, we walk away. And my youngest is like, Mom, what does it mean to flip someone off? And she knows what the finger is.
Right.
She just doesn't know it's called flipping off. And so, of course, her brother's like, it's when you go like this. And she's like, Mom, when can I do that to someone?
When they rev their engine at you.
Yes. I said, when they start to objectify your body, you can flip them off.
Right.
But only if you can protect yourself.
Right.
But, it's hard to have these conversations and share these lessons with kids in such a world that we live in.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was a fun story. And that came after my god-awful weekend of unprovoked and unpleasant male experiences.
Oh, God.
So it's like, it's weird, like March 1st happens and then all of a sudden, like the part of your brain that's like women's history, feminism, women's right, or women's rights, you're like, and then you start noticing like how men treat you when you're out in public. Because it's sort of more at the forefront.
Yeah.
And so my sister and I have this like funny tradition of giving each other like thrifted Christmas presents.
Okay.
So we don't spend money on like, new stuff. It has to be thrifted. So I'm really good at it.
That's fun.
Yeah, I'm really good at it. I buy her like meaningful, thoughtful stuff that like she would really like. And she's not as great at it, but that's okay. It's the thought that counts. But what I got last year, or this past Christmas, was this like oversized, really soft and comfortable hoodie, and it says "God is a woman" on it.
Okay.
And I'm like, yeah, that is something that I would wear, even though, if I had to say, with all the shit that's going on in the world right now, if there is a God, it's not a fucking woman.
Right. Oh my God, I had that same thought.
Yeah.
I was like, no, she wouldn't put up with this shit.
Exactly. So that's why I was like sort of hesitant about the sweater. I was like, there's just something about this that isn't sitting right with me.
Because you posted on your Instagram a photo of it, and I had that thought. I'm like, I never thought of it, but I don't think God is a woman after all.
Exactly.
I don't think so. She's not that great.
Right. But the sweater is still great because it pisses a lot of men off.
That we like.
So my first encounter was I was buying a mattress off of Facebook Marketplace, because those are the times we live in, people. Okay, do you know how much brand new mattresses are? Like, I'm sorry, I don't have $300 to drop on a mattress. So I bought one off of Facebook Marketplace, and I'm, being the strong, independent woman that I am, putting it in my van by myself. I'm blocking someone's driveway, and of course it's an angry man.
Of course.
So he drives up in his truck, and he's like, "Hey, you're blocking my driveway."
As you have a mattress halfway in your car.
Yes.
Like, give me a second.
So I look at him, and I'm like, a moment passes because I'm like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Okay, then get out and help me."
Good for you.
And then as soon as I say it, Siri wants to be a part of this conversation. Sorry,
she said,
Siri.
yes, go girl.
Siri's allowed, and she's a lady. But no, again, these are all about how not all men are shitty, because in the passenger seat was his friend. And of course the angry man was like, mumbling under his breath. So his friend was like, "Oh, I'll help you." So he gets out and he puts a cigarette on the sidewalk, and he like
classy.
He's like, "Oh, we got we got to move the seats up." So I'm like, "Oh yeah, this seat's really hard to move. Like, I'm not strong enough. Can you do it?" Like, "Please help me, damsel in distress." And so he does it. He moves it up, and like I'm like, "Okay, we're almost there. And so I was like, "Oh, we just have to put the headrests down, and it'll fit perfectly." And so I go to put the headrest down, and then this angry motherfucker comes in, and he just like shoves the mattress in with all of his might and slams the back of my car van.
The driver.
Yeah, the angry. While his friend is like trying to move the headrest.
Right, he's trying to accommodate.
And then I was like, okay, I guess we're done. And he was like, I'm really sorry about him. He's in a really bad mood. I'm like, it's okay. You were really nice. So thank you. I appreciate it. He's like, you have a good day. Like, he was like,
Embarrassed.
yeah. And so, it was like, not all men are bad, I guess. So then I go to Target to get a mattress cover because this mattress pad needs this mattress needs a mattress cover because it's used. And I'm wearing my God is a Woman sweater. And there's this like youngish guy sitting on the bench at Target, and it's 9:30 in the morning, and he's got an 18-pack of like pretty expensive beer. It's not Bud Light. It's like, like that kind of expensive like Fat Tire kind of beer or whatever.
Okay.
It's like brand name or whatever. And he's like deep in this beer. He is just shit face at 9:30.
9:30 in the morning.
Yes. And so I'm walking. I want to throw my coffee cup away. And he's right next to the trash can, so I'm like, whatever, I just gotta throw it away. And so he's like, he reads my sweater, he's like, God is the woman, because he's super drunk.
Right.
That's what it sounded like. And so I was like, yep. And then it's like, his processing time was slow, so it took him some time to figure out what he just said. And I'm walking away, like almost in the store, and he's like, God is not a woman.
Oh,
He's
Lord.
so angry. I was like, okay.
Have another beer, my friend.
Yeah.
Chill.
So, and then something else happened. I don't remember. But the point is, I kept having all these like unpleasant experiences. But if you look on the flip side of things, you'll always, not always, but I was able to find a pleasant male experience alongside that.
To contradict and,
and
kind of balance.
Yeah.
Balance things out a little.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we need. We need men who will keep the other men in place.
Exactly.
And hold them accountable.
100%.
Because if we don't have that, they're not going to listen to us women.
No.
That's not
been
happening.
Proven.
Yeah.
Over hundreds and thousands of years.
Well, right. We have people now wanting to pass laws where we don't get to vote anymore.
Yeah.
Like they're really like...
There's some extreme people that maybe like 10 or pre-Trump...
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. It wouldn't have been the case.
Right.
But ever since Trump, blasted open the door of, it's okay to be racist, it's okay to be sexist, it's okay to be anti-Semitic, like it's okay to just like, be hateful towards people that are different from you. They're coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah, and somehow they try to play it as family values.
Yes.
But I'm like, no.
And that's what happens in Handmaid's Tale.
Yes.
And that kind of goes back to what we were saying about how not all women are innocent here.
Right.
Because I know this was supposed to be a 5-star story at the end, but I'm going to talk about the lady in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I forgot her name, but she, while you look it up, I'll tell you that she was running for like Massachusetts like state representative or something along those lines, and she's just like the most outspoken Nazi supporting racist that I've ever heard of. Like I can't believe
and
the things that she says.
Kanye obsessed.
Oh, and she's obsessed with Kanye.
That like is a big red flag.
Yeah, and she's just like, you can tell like, she's got a few screws loose maybe. I don't know. Should I not say that? Is that insensitive to say?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I take it back. But you can tell that it's like she thinks in these like extreme manners, and so she's got like a pretty big following on social media, and she ran to be the state person in Massachusetts. She got 37% of the vote.
Her name's Lori Kaufman.
That's right.
Anybody wants to look her up.
Lori Kaufman.
Yes.
But she got 37% of the vote.
37%.
Yes.
That's really high.
And the things that she says are like, she like identifies as a Nazi. Yeah, so she's so anti-Semitic and just hateful that the state Republican Party made a resolution about her. And this is what it says. In light of the persistent surge of anti-Semitism at home and abroad, the Massachusetts Republican Committee strongly condemns the prejudice and anti-Semitic statement of Lori Kaufman. Recognizing that such repugnant views are directly against the values of the Republican Party, the committee takes a decisive stand against hatred and bigotry.
Wow.
I mean, we've said this before, like this isn't a Republican Democrat thing. This is like a human justice thing. Like, you can be Republican, and you can still be a decent person.
Right, but you have to be careful because now in North Carolina, the Republican nominee
Is just as bad.
is just as bad. She just retweeted about him, and I did want to bring him up as well. His
Also,
name is
Lori Kaufman is like in favor of the new nominee for North Carolina.
And listen to what she reposted. It says, a fierce critic of the civil rights movement. This is a black man.
Oh, that's right.
North Carolina
Gubernational, right?
Gubernatorial.
Gubernatorial.
That's a hard word.
We did it.
Gubernatorial nominee Mark Robinson was reportedly offended after Trump told him he was Martin Luther King on steroids.
Oh my gosh.
That's offensive to Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Not to you, sir.
Yeah.
Robinson has previously described the civil rights movement as a communist plot to subvert capitalism, adding that so many freedoms were lost during the civil rights movement. Like, sir, the reason you can run right now is because of the civil rights movement. You wouldn't even be able to vote.
Wow.
Like,
that is so confusing.
Is everyone home? Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like, in mental health is no laughing matter, but like there are some people that have, if you have the money, but you still have like some mental health things going on, but like they're not being taken care of, like that's how you end up with these people in power. And that's not good. And then you've got all these other people that are like, extremist Republicans that are like, white power or the civil rights movement was bad, and then they just kind of go along with it.
And more than likely, Republicans will then use him to say like, oh, look, here is my black friend.
Exactly. They will
see, we're not racist.
Yeah. So speaking of all of that and how it ties into The Handmaid's Tale, starting in Alabama with the fetal personhood legislation, do you know why that started?
No.
So it was this all happened years ago. You know how sometimes it takes years for things to happen. So it was probably, I don't know how many years ago. It was like, I don't know, at least 5-ish years ago in a hospital that a escaped patient who they obviously haven't identified him because of HIPAA, but I think this story has had dementia or Alzheimer's or something, and he just wandered himself into a lab containing frozen embryos.
Oh, you're talking about what happened right now in Alabama specifically.
Yes. Yeah, this is how this all sort of like came to be.
Okay.
Because of this one man who accidentally broke glass tubes of frozen embryos and killed some embryos, right? And these embryos belongs to a couple who were trying to get pregnant. And so the couple was very upset, understandably. And so they sued, and that essentially led to, what we're seeing today.
Right.
Which is, are embryos people? Or like, should they have rights? And so that's where the controversy comes in. And, we could go down a huge rabbit hole and talk for hours about it. But what it's leading to is, taking away access to IVF.
Right.
And so that's sort of been the saving grace of all this, which has been preventing this whole fetal personhood thing, or not preventing, but postponing.
And I did read somewhere that they've been pushing the fetal personhood before this, and they haven't been able to because of Roe versus Wade.
Which is now
overturned. Now that it's overturned, they're bringing it up again.
Yeah.
Because that will make it where abortion is illegal.
Exactly.
So that's their end game.
And they say that's not their end game, but we know that is what their end game is. But there are so many women and families who rely on IVF that this makes it impossible. I mean, I know nothing's impossible, but it really makes it hard to say that fetuses have rights.
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like,
are you going to ask the fetus permission? Like, if it, like, hello, do you want to become a human?
Right.
Blink once for yes.
And it's the idea that it will become a person. At this point, it is not.
Right.
So when do we decide, like sperm, when it mixes with an egg, will become a person? So do we control now sperm as well and eggs?
Yeah. Well, they're already trying to control
women, we know they're going to.
Bodies.
But, they're not going to do that for men.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it relates to this book, The Handmaid's Tale, but...
Yeah. Off topic a little bit, now that I just brought up men and their sperm. You know how women get IUDs?
Yes.
And we don't get anything like for the pain or anything. It's just like grin and bear it.
Yeah.
apparently there is a male version out now. And part of like getting it done is first getting numbed. Like it's expected to be done.
No, I actually just had an appointment about this, and she was like, I'm gonna write you a prescription so that the procedure goes easier, and like I'm like, okay, because I have to get one. I think they only last like 5 to 7 years, so you have to change it out every 5 to 7 years. But I would love it if I could take a break from that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I was just told, take Tylenol before you come. And I'm like, okay. I have a high tolerance for pain, right? I guess some women, the idea is that we do.
It does not feel good.
But it's still not pleasurable. Like, if I had an option, numb me up.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, but we don't get the numb. Yeah, because
we don't get,
that's what you're saying, yeah. Because the drugs that she's writing for me isn't for pain. It's to open the... Sorry, we're getting graphic here, but it's okay. It's
like to soften the lining?
It's human anatomy. Yeah, it's to like... soften it and make it bigger so that you can put it in there, but it doesn't take away the pain,
right? Because they clamp. I mean, look up a video.
Yeah, and when I got it in the first time, I had a male doctor, and his bedside manner was not great. And he was just like what you said, take the Tylenol because you have a low threshold for pain. And I'm like, how do you know that? Because, I was asking him, I was like, what do you mean Tylenol? He's like, well, remember when I scraped your membranes and you cried or something like that? And I'm like, you don't have membranes. Like, you don't know what it's like.
Right.
Like, he was not a great doctor. He didn't even deliver my baby because he was...
Yeah, he sounds like a jerk.
He was busy.
Thank God, right?
I know. You know who delivered her were the nurses, the female nurses. And she was actually, we're off topic really far now, but she was corkscrewed. She was ready to come out. And then all of a sudden she changed her position because I think it was the Pitocin that they gave me, which could do that sometimes. And so the nurses were like, oh no, she's like sideways. And they're like, you might have to have a C-section. I was like, I really don't want to have one. They're like, well, we're going to do everything we can. And so they had me like pulling out a towel. They had me in all these different positions. Like they knew what they were doing.
Right.
They got that baby back where she needed to be. And then they're like, doctor, I could hear them. The phone was right next to my bed. They're like, she's ready. And I could hear him because it was so close. He's like, not yet. I'm almost done. He was in a C-section.
Oh.
And they're like, doctor, we cannot hold this baby for you. They literally said that. And so I was like, can you guys just do it?
Right.
And they're like, well, we would get in trouble. I'm like, just do it. And so they grabbed...
I'm pushing. You're going to have to catch the baby.
They were like, literally grabbed the first doctor that was in the hallway. I had never met this person before in my life. And they just... It was fine.
Sometimes it works for the best.
Yeah. Anyway... Sorry, we're 20 minutes in. We're going to talk about the book now. But all of it is related to The Handmaid's Tale, which I read the graphic novel and Jennifer read the novel.
Yes. So the book was originally published in 1985, but then the paperback apparently came back out in 98.
Oh, okay.
So years later. But it's considered a classic.
Yeah.
It always seems relevant. And I saw a video where she says that everything she put in the book came from something that has happened.
Oh, really?
So it's not like she's just like making it up.
Yeah.
She's, changing it a little.
Yeah.
But all this has happened in one way or another at one point in history.
Right. Yeah, and those dystopian novels are... I think so important for like literature in literature classes. One, because they're so engaging, right? Students are like into that for sure because who wouldn't be? It's so interesting.
Yeah.
But two, because it really does provoke critical thinking skills among high schoolers.
Yeah.
So that you can have these like meaningful and deep discussions about like what the future could be like if Hitler continued to be the ruler, which is so relevant. Why not? Like, why would something like this be banned from like I'm saying high school, even though it reminds me of a middle school dystopian novel, The Giver.
Okay.
Yeah. Which obviously there's not, because I'm looking at the book report right now, and it says, this book contains alcohol use, explicit sexual activities. Not really that bad, though.
This is the book looks.
Yeah, this is book looks. Sexual nudity, mild profanity, explicit violence, yes. But, violence is just a part of society.
It's right.
And controversial gender ideologies. Of course, they had to throw that one in there. But, with The Giver, which is a middle school level, but like I read it when I was in middle school, there was a scene where a baby was killed. Do you remember?
I didn't read the book. I remember seeing the movie. And I knew it was based on a book.
Yeah, the book was, sometimes how, books can be scarier than movies.
Yeah.
The book was a little scarier than the movie, as I recall, because I remember the description of the baby being killed by the main character's dad, and it's like, as a 8th grader, you're just like, it just like flips a switch and you're like, oh, this is how like society could be.
Right.
This is a possibility or whatever. Like, it just really encourages that critical thinking.
Yeah. So. That's why these books are important. It's almost like the idea that we have to shy away from tough subjects because they're teenagers. They know what's happening. It's not, and this is not anything to me that was that bad. Right.
No. And you know what? I was wondering as I was reading it, I was like, I wonder if Jennifer's version is, quote, worse than mine. Because, like I said, words can sometimes be scarier than pictures. But, because mine's a graphic novel, the pictures weren't bad at all.
Okay.
Like, because, in Mouse 1, did we cover Mouse 1 and 2?
I think so.
The pictures in that were, I think, a little bit more...
Impactful, maybe?
Impactful, yeah. And the pictures in this were not as... Like, it was... I would say, as someone who refuses to watch the TV show, because I've been told at how... impactful and like sad it is.
Yeah.
The graphic novel is for people like me who just like can't handle sad stuff,
Okay.
So like, I mean, and I can handle some sad stuff, but like I couldn't get through Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Or even Breaking Bad. Like, those were it was like too much. I was like, you know what? I can't do this.
So, like, HBO takes it too far.
Yes, yeah. Okay. So, like, there's no way. But now after reading the book, I really want to watch the show.
I do too, because I started watching it. I didn't finish it.
But it's when the daughter gets taken away, is what I heard was, like, such a sad and, like... And it's the reason I couldn't watch it is because the people that were telling me about it was like, it's like so realistic.
Right.
It's scary.
It is. So I saw it years ago, right? When it was like really first becoming popular. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, popular shows make these kids want to read the book.
Exactly.
So it encourages reading. So I just want to say Monster Liberty was on 60 Minutes recently.
That's right.
And one of them made the point to say, like, oh, reading scores are down. And that was, like, her excuse for apparently book banning. I don't know. And my thing is, I know, make it make sense. If their reading scores are down, shouldn't we be encouraging them to read anything?
Things that they are interested in.
Right. Yeah. And so these are books that they're going to want to read. Let them read it.
Because you can give a kid who is a very, quote, high-level reader... Give him a book that is not interesting to him, like about ballet, right?
Right.
And have him take a test on it. He's not going to do well.
Right.
Just, even though he's got a really high reading level, that I've seen that happen in all 3 of my kids. Like, oh, Mom, I'm sorry, but I got a 75 on this test. I'm like, oh, why do you think you got a 75? Because it was boring and I didn't understand what they were talking about. I was like, what do you mean you didn't understand? Was it hard? He's like, no, it was just really hard to focus because it was so boring.
They tune out.
So it's not like it was some high-level text that he was given to read. It was just boring.
Right, and I get that because there's some books that I start to tune out because I get bored, and then I have to, like, refocus.
That sounds like my job.
An adult. Right.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's, like, so dumb to be like, oh, reading scores are down.
So let's ban more all the really good books that kids want to read.
Like, that's really... Mm-hmm. That's where you want to take this, okay?
I will say though, my almost 11-year-old saw this, and it's kind of a pretty cover. It's like it's got the black and then the red and white contrast. Mm-hmm. So she's like, "Oh, what is this? Can I read it?" And I was like, "No."
Yeah.
She was like, "Why?" And I was like, "Well, it's really sad." And she's like, "Oh, never mind. I don't want to read it then." So it's like, okay, like if she were to like beg and beg and beg, maybe I would like. And I don't know. This hasn't happened, thankfully, but maybe I'd be like, let's look at one of the pictures and talk about, talk about how it makes you feel, and then see if you think you're ready to learn about stuff like that, because you're still just an 11-year-old kid who doesn't really need to worry about this kind of stuff. And we actually have had those conversations because she wants to read every single book we cover on this podcast.
That's my son too.
But now she's starting to realize, like, oh, well, I have time, and maybe I'm not ready to read these yet. But I think if you're, older and you have you've gone through a few different things in life, then you should definitely read this book.
Right. And we're talking about 10, 11-year-olds.
Not reading the book.
Right. Yeah. We're not saying about 15, 14.
No, that's what I think. High school.
Yeah. And I think even middle school, like an 8th or 7th grader might be able to read this, depending on their maturity,
Yeah, I would say the maturity is really important because, like, as a middle school teacher, those kids, the maturity level just isn't there. And as a 9th grade teacher, it isn't there. Right. It gets there right around 10th grade. Not for every kid. Right. But if you're doing it in a group setting, it would be really hard to see the significance of this. But, like, I'm having flashbacks to when I was a junior in my high school, and we read really controversial books now that we would never be able to read, Their Eyes Were Watching God, which is one we need to cover, and then also I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And we were 11th grade, and that was, like, my core memory of, like, being like, wow, my classmates are actually mature enough to handle this conversation. And that was, like, 11th grade. Okay. So just from my experience as a student and as a teacher, I would say that this book isn't really for the masses until at least 11th grade. Yeah. Yeah.
But I also want to point out, a lot of these kids in middle school have watched the show.
That's also very true. That's a good point. So that brings a very good point, because when I was growing up, like, obviously we didn't have, it wasn't as, like, TV was different. Right. Yeah. But let me just show you one of the pictures. I'm sure you've seen it, but it's a picture of the ceremony.
While you look it up, I'm just going to mention what the book synopsis is. Okay. Because I haven't done that yet. Oh, yeah. So in this book, it's a dystopian future. Environmental disasters and declining birth rates have led to a second American Civil War. The result is the rise of the Republic of Gilead, a totalitarian regime that enforces rigid social roles and enslaves the few remaining fertile women. Offred is one of these, a handmaid bound to produce children for one of Gilead's commanders. Deprived of her husband, her child, her freedom, and even her own name, Offred clings to her memories and her will to survive. At once a scathing satire, ominous warning, and a tour de force of narrative suspense, The Handmaid's Tale is a modern classic. Yeah. And so, surprisingly, it hasn't won really any awards, which I'm pretty shocked by. But it was a finalist for the 1986 Booker Prize. So
for being around since the 80s, I'm shocked too. Right. Especially since, because, it really just became famous because of the series, which I think I'm going to just have to watch. Yeah. Now that I, like, know what happens.
You know who narrates it?
Who?
Claire Danes.
Oh.
I thought that was interesting.
And the actress is from Mad Men, Peggy from Mad Men. And we talked about something.
Yeah,
I think she's a Scientologist.
Yeah, I think she's a little iffy. Yeah. I've heard, but I don't. Yeah. I can't give you details.
She's a good actress, though. But anyway, it's funny how you say her name is Offred, because that's how I started reading it first. But then I realized it's of Fred. That's the husband of Fred. And remember some of the other, I know, and I was like, I wonder if Jennifer is going to catch on to this, because I didn't catch on until halfway through the book, and it's of Glenn, of Fred, of Harry. I don't know.
I'm trying to remember. Like, I listened to the audio as I read.
Oh, maybe they said it like off Fred or off Glenn.
I'm remembering the movie or the show. Shoot, hold on.
Because the main character's name is Offred. And in the first part of the book,
which is not her actual name.
She's like, that's not my real name. I'm not going to tell you my real name. My real name is for mine, for me to think about in my head when I'm alone or whatever. And maybe one day I'll be called by my real name again. But the man that she's paired with is named Frederick R. Waterford. So that's why she's named Of Fred. And then she has...
Of Glenn. I remember Of Glenn, not Off Glenn. Of Fred. You know what? I think you're right.
I started reading it and I was like, Off Glenn, Off Fred. I was like, these are weird names. And then it was like halfway through the book that I realized why. they were named that way, and it's because of the men that they were paired with.
Now I want to hear the audio.
Yeah.
I'm
they
curious.
may say it like that in the audio just to...
No, I think you might be right. But now I'm like, you know where I'm like, shoot, which one was it?
But anyway, this is sort of like I wouldn't say it's well, it is a patriarchal society.
Yeah.
But there are lots of women that are given power, right? Like what are they called?
The
ants.
Yes.
The ants who they like poke them with electric cattle prods in like the big warehouse
They
where they
train
live.
basically the handmaids.
To give birth or to have sex or both.
A little bit of everything.
Because it's like when they were doing their exercises, like lift up your hips, put your hips down. I'm like, what is that training for giving birth?
I think it was birth.
Okay.
I read that as when they were giving birth.
Okay.
Because they're not supposed to enjoy sex.
Yeah.
That's a chore.
Yeah. It's called the ceremony.
Right. And the whole point of it is just to get pregnant.
Because fertility has been such an issue in both men and women, but it is illegal to say that the man is sterile.
Right.
It's only the woman. So
we can't blame men for anything.
Exactly.
Basically. And that's what the book is like stressing. Like, no, it's not the man's fault. It's yours.
It is a patriarchal society, but like women helped it become this way.
Yes. Well,
the main
the
character
wives,
being, what's her name?
Oh my God, I said her name earlier.
Serena
Joy.
Yeah, Serena Joy. And at the beginning, before like this second Civil War, she was like this Moms for Liberty figure who was like singing all these like gospel songs on TV and like talking about like a woman's duty, even though like she was out traveling the world, like being this like public speaker and how, telling women how to be, she couldn't get pregnant because of like the natural disasters and like the radiation and like the nuclear power plants breaking down or like blowing up or whatever. It resulted in all these women and men becoming sterile. But of course, men aren't allowed.
Or having like mutated babies and things like that.
Yeah, which is so relevant to the work that I'm doing as a curriculum writer right now. I couldn't believe it. It was such a coincidence. I'm writing a lesson for fifth graders in Costa Rica where they, as fifth graders, get to investigate the negative impacts of chemical pesticides on fertility rate of indigenous women.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's crazy how relevant it is to this book because like there are so many pesticides that have been banned by like the European Union, but not America, not Costa Rica. And you would think like there was a time where America would ban these things.
Right.
Like well, if the EU banned it, then probably America did too. But there's one in particular that America still uses and Costa Rica still uses, and the data about the how it affects fertility rate and birth defects is insane. But it's still
and that kind of ties back to the IVF thing and the embryo thing because the Republicans and their whole thing is we want people to have babies. That's. But then they do things.
It's like, well, if you do this, then the rich people are not going to be able to have babies because for whatever reason, whether it's a nuclear plant meltdown or a pesticide or just because they're a little bit older and they still want to have a baby, like you're making it so they can't have it. But that's why that legislation was postponed.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying. I think a lot of what she writes about in this book pulls from history and things that actually happen.
Yeah. It's not like some people think dystopian. They're like, that would never happen. I don't think so.
Right.
And I used to be one of those people. I used to be like, oh, don't be a doomsdayer. But no, this is like...
There's a reason a lot of times at these women's marches and protests, there's women dressed in Handmaid's Tale costumes.
I get it now.
Yeah. That's...
Well, so let's talk about the costumes. Okay. So there's the women in red, and those are the handmaids.
Yes. Blue is for the wives.
Like the Serena Joy.
Yes, the upper class wives.
Yeah. And they're married to...
The commanders and the chiefs or...
I don't know. They're not actually commanders. They're just called commanders.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like anyone... Yeah. And then the ants, they dress in brown. But they're... I don't know. It makes me think, like, how does one become an ant? It's like an older woman who can't have... give birth, but, like... Maybe she proved herself that she could be like
loyal
to the cause.
Yeah.
The bad cause. And then what I liked were the ones in green. What were they named? Or
in green.
The ones...
I know there were the stripes, and those were like the regular wives who, basically like lower income wives, but they weren't handmaids.
Right. They weren't provide. Yeah, and the job of the handmaid is to get pregnant, which we'll get into in a little bit. But the women in the green,
I don't remember the green. Hold on.
they're the housekeepers, and they.
Oh, duh.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they don't.
They're not called housekeepers, though.
I don't know. They're called something else.
No, Econo wives were the other women.
Econo wives were the ones in the red and green stripes, and then
Marthas. They're called the Marthas.
Yeah, and so the Marthas are in charge of like bathing the handmaids and making the food and cooking and cleaning. And
they're like the housekeepers.
Yeah,
that's the vibe I got.
But I think they're older. They're not like obviously they're not in their childbearing years, right? According to, because I get the pictures.
Okay.
So I don't know what they say in your book, but
I know they described there was two in the household. I think Cora was one of them, and then there was the other one. I can't think of her name right now. I got the impression one was older.
Yeah. And
then the one that seems to be like nicer to her.
Yeah, she actually was younger, but for some reason she did not become a handmaid, and they didn't really.
Well, because not everybody was fertile.
So that's right. They take him to the doctor to see if they're fertile. But it's confusing because Offred was taken to the doctor and deemed fertile, but she has not been pregnant. This is her third try.
But that goes back to the males being the problem.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for reminding me of that. See, I was like, the whole time I was reading this, I was like, I have to ask Jennifer what this means.
So let's go over what Monster Liberty had an issue with in the book, and then everything. But then discuss like why it's relevant and why taken out of context it's looks worse than it is.
Okay.
Like for me, I don't know. You have the graphic novel one, and I have the regular novel one. They tag page 3 right off the back. There was old sex in the room and loneliness, and expectation of something without a shape or name. There's no sex happening here.
Really?
She's literally describing when she's going through a building, and I'm guessing it was like a high school gym.
Oh. Yeah, I don't know.
And so she's describing it. There's no sex happening there. It just has like sex had happened there. You know, like young teenage love is what the impression I got. But like
they just Googled
years ago.
They just Control-F'd sex is all they did.
There was nothing graphic happening there, nothing titillating or anything like that. It was kind of like depressing, the description she was giving of where she was.
Yeah. So no, that's not in mine. The first one in mine is on page 33, which of course I don't have page numbers. So I'm just going to read. It says, the illustration on this page depicts a group of 6 individuals hanging in the air by their necks at various heights. The bodies are suspended above a sidewalk in front of a gray stone wall. All of the individuals are wearing long white coats. 4 of them have signs on their chests with an illustration of a fetus in a silhouette. So it is a very, it's not a very graphic image. Like, exactly what I described to you, but like there's no blood. It's a picture of a fetus. It's not a real fetus, but they're like the way that the artist made it, it was like, okay, I understand the point that they're making, but it's not like a super graphic and disturbing image. But the bodies were doctors who had performed abortions.
Okay, yeah, that was here too. Yeah, they have it.
And they're going to claim, we don't, this is the description of hanging,
right?
And so we have a problem with the violence, but it's not the violence that they have a problem with; it's the abortion,
right?
The mention of an abortion.
Yeah, because I mean, there's no violence there either. Obviously, what happened was violent, but nothing violent is happening in that moment. It's obviously just not a nice thing to walk upon and see. They also, for mine, because we have that tagged, before that they discussed stillborn. Stillborn it was, or stabbed her with a knitting needle right in the belly.
Oh, yeah.
Jealousy, it must have been. Eating her up, or tantalizingly, it was toilet cleaner she used. Worked like a charm. Though you'd think he'd have tasted it. Must have been that drunk, but they found her out all right.
See, that wasn't in my book.
And that's out of context, right? Yeah. Like, you don't know if you just read that, you don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
I don't know, because it wasn't in my book, yeah.
And I think at that point, if I'm remembering just off memory, they're talking about sometimes what happens with the handmaids once they deliver a baby. Sometimes they're stillborn.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes, obviously with hormones and everything, and they take your baby from you, because then the wives get it.
Yeah.
And the wives get jealous of the handmaids.
Yeah.
So
because they can't have the baby themselves.
they're explaining like situations that have happened. Like one wife stabbed a handmaid with a knitting needle. But that's a whole description there, like of different scenarios.
That actually is in my book, but just the knitting needle part. And I didn't, but they didn't go into detail, so I was like, I don't really know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So it was the wife that did that. Yeah. So that actually brings me to two things you reminded me of. The first is, in this dystopian society where fertility rates have skyrocketed and birth defects have skyrocketed, it is illegal to use medical technology to scan the baby to see if there's any like abnormalities or whatever, because you have to give birth to it anyway.
Right.
And so
that's kind of relevant to now.
it is very relevant because abortions are absolutely 100% necessary for women whose life is now at risk because they are pregnant.
Yeah.
Or for women who are going to give birth to a stillborn. Like, we have medical technology that can, make that process a little bit less harrowing for that woman, but that would require an abortion.
And it also protects the life of the mother.
Yes, which should be the number one priority,
Right.
but it's not. And we can see that with these fetal personhood laws that are inching forward. And, this book does a really good job at painting a picture, literally, of what that can look like if things are continuing to go down the path that we are seeing them go down.
Right.
And it really is scary.
Yeah.
It's super scary. And it also drives home the point that books like this are so important so that people like us and the generations before us and after us can like actually see a possibility. Like, of course not, it's not going to be exactly this way, or maybe hopefully it won't be like this at all, but it's like it's meant to get the wheels turning. We just want the wheels to be turning.
It makes you think.
Yeah, we don't want to be in denial.
And this is why they want them banned. Not because of anything that's happening in the book. It's because they don't want you to think. They want to be able to pass these laws, and they don't want us to be like, oh, we don't like that. We saw where this ends.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Which it would make them go out and vote maybe not Republican.
Right.
And I hate identifying with Democrats because I really hate the bipartisan system that we're in right now.
Yes.
But I'm telling you, Democrats don't want to ban abortion or reproductive freedom for women. And that's just a very relevant thing in my life right now.
I know, right.
In society. But so the other thing I was going to say is I just can't wait to talk about the ceremony. Can we talk about the ceremony?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, these handmaids that are dressed in red have been trained to have sex with these men with their wives in the same room, right? And it's all biblical.
Yeah, it's so weird.
So the ceremony starts out with him reading from the Bible about like Rachel or something. Do you remember?
I can never say that
Deuteronomy or
that
something?
one.
That one. I don't know anything about the Bible, but here, let me find it.
So he takes out the Bible from a locked box because, by the way, women aren't allowed to read.
That's right. Okay.
So that's also very important. They don't want them reading
That's
books.
why they play an illegal game of Scrabble later, but we'll get into that.
So the commander takes out the Bible from a locked box and proceeds to read from it. Reluctantly. He's not very good at reading either.
Really?
Yeah, it says he isn't very good at it. Maybe he's merely bored.
Oh.
It's the usual story, the usual stories. God to Adam, God to Noah, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Then comes the moldy old Rachel and Leah stuff we had drummed into us at the center. Give me children or else I die. Am I in God's stead? Who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? Behold my maid Bela? She shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her.
Yes.
And so on and so forth. We had it read to us every breakfast as we sat in the high school cafeteria eating porridge with cream and brown sugar. You're getting the best, said Aunt Lydia. That's the aunts that train them.
Oh,
So she's going back between remembering as
when
he
she was
reads
training.
and right, because they
they're the first generation.
beat this into them, basically.
Yeah, but they're the first generation, so they remember what it was like before.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a war on things. Things are rationed. You are spoiled girls, she twinkled, as if rebuking a kitten. Naughty puss. So
Yeah. That is what they read. That is what not Warren, what's his name? Fred.
the commander.
Fred, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what Fred reads on the night of the ceremony when Fred is having her first ceremony with him and his wife, right? And so he reads that. And what I just find so interesting about that point is it's a real Bible verse, and it really happened. So because, was it Rachel or Leah? Which one was the one that said, use my servant to...
It's Leah.
That's right.
So he keeps reading it. He says, and Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband.
Yeah. So that is what you see in this picture right here. So,
okay, yes.
Which is why I think the graphic novel is so important, because there's 5 words on 2 pages. It says, the ceremony goes as usual. And it shows in this 4-poster canopy bed, Fred's wife, all in blue, and she looks just miserable as fuck because
she's crying during this
because she can't have a baby, and that's all she wants, or maybe she doesn't even want to have a baby, but she doesn't want her husband to be having sex with a woman on top of her, because that's what's happening. Then you have Fred, who's in red, and her hands are being held back by Fred's wife, and then Fred is on top of Fred. And you can see he's got a shirt on, but he doesn't have pants on, so you can see his butt, and you can see his facial expressions of of what he's doing to her, and she's just kind of laying there because that's what she was trained to do. And then he gets off, puts his pants on, and leaves, and she's supposed to rest for 10 minutes with her feet on a pillow to improve the chances of fertilization. But she's so upset. The wife is so upset that she screams at her to get out because of what she just experienced. So then Fred, leaves the room, and she thinks to herself, which of us is it worse for, her or me?
Right. And so, I look at that image, right, and I think it's kind of ironic that this is basically a threesome.
Yeah.
But not the kinky kind, And we have the whole Bridget Ziegler thing, being into threesomes.
Yeah. See, if the women are liberated in the threesome, then that's not good. The men have to be in control of the women for a threesome to be allowed, apparently.
Right, apparently.
Yeah.
So in this book, right, none of them are really willing participants other than the guy.
No, not even.
He's pretending not to be.
I think. Well, of course, he is definitely getting the most benefit out of this whole situation. But later on, it's revealed that Fred is, quote, more liberal than the other ones because he has the Vogue magazines, remember? Yes. And he has the lingerie.
They also go to a nightclub.
He smuggles her out of the house against his wife's, without his wife's knowledge, because he likes the old times.
Yeah.
He likes...
But so do a lot of the commanders.
Yeah.
Because they're all there.
But of course they're not going... who's to say, because you're not in their situation, but they're not going to lead an uprising.
Right.
But at the same time, they're not going to stop having sex with all these women.
Well, and we see this in our government all the time.
Yeah.
The people making laws, or in this case, Bridget Ziegler, who wants to ban books and who wants to look down on the LGBTQ community. Meanwhile, she participates in threesomes with another woman.
Exactly, yeah.
So they want to be able to do those things.
But still control society.
Yes.
Yeah, for their own benefit.
So it's you can't do it, but I can.
It's all about power too. And that's kind of ultimately what men, not all men, okay, but most men want is power, right? But what's interesting with Fred is like we said, he smuggles her into this brothel, essentially.
Basically, yeah.
And so this is where we find out the women who are not Marthas or aunts or stripes or handmaids or unwomen, which we find out are basically murdered for whatever reason, end up being these prostitutes. Yeah. Or sex workers, I should say. And that's where she meets her friend Moira, who's a lesbian. But Moira escaped from the Handmaid's, training camp.
Right. That was her childhood friend.
Yeah. And so she thought she was dead, but she meets her at this brothel, and Moira explains to her, she's like, it's better than your situation. Because it made me think which situation would I rather be in? Right.
And I don't know if in the graphic novel it mentions, but there were doctors there. Lawyers.
Yes, it does.
That they preferred to be basically a hooker.
Yeah, because because they were treated like a human there still.
Yes.
Because they were doing something voluntarily.
Yeah.
It was a brothel, and there was music, there was dancing, there was food, there was drinks, but it was like that's where the commanders went to go have sex with willing women.
Right.
Because he talks about Fred talks about how, you know, like the chase, there wasn't like the chase or something. And the way he described it was so like, you know, sexist, but but it made sense the way that he was describing it. It was like we now live in a society where it's like, you know, sex isn't fun anymore, right?
Basically.
Yeah.
And that's the whole idea, because the videos that they would show of Fred, when she was with the aunts, they would show them videos of women being sexy or wearing two-piece bathing suits or low-cut shirts. And it was very like, oh, there's that whole scene with Janine.
Oh, poor Janine. She went over the rails.
So
yeah, I have it right here. I think in both of our books, Janine is forced to stand up in front of the class during the Handmaid's, you know, training camp or whatever. And she said, I committed abortion. I was raped. I was 14. A group of men. And then she gets interrupted by the aunt. But whose fault was it? The other women sitting at the desks are saying, but chanting.
Right.
Her fault, her fault, her fault. And then the aunt says, who led them on? The other women sitting at desks are saying, she did, she did, she did, she did. So yeah, that was in the book looks. Probably because of the word raped and abortion.
Not because they were shaming her for...
Exactly.
As being, you know, victim shaming.
Yes, yeah.
And I thought it was
happens.
funny, not funny, but like that it was in the graphic novel, it was flagged. It wasn't flagged for the novel. It's not here.
Interesting. Yeah.
And other things that they tag, or I say tagging, that they
have a problem
point out.
Yeah.
So it's just so dumb. If you just read it out of context. My breasts are fingered in their turn. A search for ripeness wrought.
Oh, is this at the doctor's office?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's at the doctor's office.
Yeah.
A doctor examines your breast during a physical when you go see a gynecologist.
I just had this happen to me. Same thing happened, and it was just a routine exam to make sure I didn't have cancer, which I don't, by the way. Woohoo.
A search for ripeness wrought. He's either searching to see if they're tender, like if she's fertile, or rot, looking for cancer.
Exactly. But I will say, though, maybe you didn't see this because you don't have the pictures, but in my book, that is what he was doing. They show a picture. They show a picture of him like touching her nipple, but whatever. It's a part of the exam, and they showed. But and this is gonna sound weird, but when I was reading it, I was like, oh, that's kind of a nice doctor. A little creepy, but but intentions were good because he propositioned sex.
Yes.
Because she was going to die if she didn't get pregnant.
Right.
And so he essentially said, this is your third post, and if you don't get pregnant on the third post, they kill you. And so they were checking.
They don't necessarily like shoot you. They send you off to...
You become an unwoman.
An unwoman, which means you go and work in the contaminated fields. Like,
and you have like 3 months before your skin falls off.
Right.
Is what they said. And so you become an unwoman, but then you die.
Basically.
Yeah, which is so sad. And it reminded me of the Chernobyl disaster, which is a really good documentary about... It's not a documentary. It's actually like a series about the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, and they did that they enlisted civilians to like clean up the nuclear disaster, and they died within months.
That's probably where she got that from.
Yeah. So I mean, the Chernobyl disaster. There's so many good documentaries and shows out there, but the most recent one was so good. And I mean, if you're into natural disasters like that, like you could see how that could happen.
Right.
And it can lead to all this fertility. But anyway, infertility. The doctor was like, it'll only take a minute. Like, it's better than what they're going to do to you.
Right.
And, I mean, that was just, like, crazy.
And that's the thing. Most of these babies being born are born to these doctors because the men are sterile.
Yes. And so it's funny because it's illegal to say men are sterile. But the doctor was like, you know, he's probably sterile. I can do it for you. But how does he know he's not sterile? Maybe he tested his own.
Well, he's probably had
done it
other
before.
patients, right?
Yeah.
Because Janine has a baby in the book, and later on it's revealed because the wives know. The wives know their husbands are sterile.
Yeah, because that's what Serena Joy does.
Yes.
That's getting towards the end of the book, though.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that, but yeah, you're right. The wives know, and they're like, okay, we know that it's the men that's sterile that can be sterile too, because it goes both ways.
Right.
But I want to talk real quick about how, because you think, like, how does a society become like this so quickly?
Yeah.
And so before this happens to her, like, she has a job. Her job is like transcribing books onto the internet or something like that.
Yes, she works at the library. I remember that.
And she has a husband named Luke, and she has a beautiful daughter, a 5-year-old daughter, and they live in the city, and she takes her daughter for ice cream. It's a cashless society. It's only cards, and like the cards, and you still have like tokens, and like you enter your number, and like you pay for cigarettes with tokens or something.
Right.
And so one day, all of a sudden, and there's a pride flag. It shows you, like, the street that she lives on. There's, like, a pride flag.
Okay.
And there's, like, all these, like sex working has become just, like, a normal thing. And I tagged it because I wanted to ask you about it. But it was, like, they called it, like a porn mobile. Or
a porn mart, I think.
No, there's porn mart, but there was another funny one. It was called the Feels on Wheels van.
Oh, that's funny. I don't remember that in the book. It might have been, but I don't remember it.
And the bundle buggies, BUN, like bundle buggies. And so I read it in the porno marts too. But I read it and I was like, what are they talking about? And then as you read on, you realize like it's become this like very progressive society where like sex is like just a normal thing, and sex workers are compensated for their services, but maybe the author is like kind of trying to like portray like it's like maybe shifted a little too far in one direction.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe like that does seem weird.
Well, it's interesting that the pride flag is there too, because in this society, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Because there's 2 guards
that are hung
for having sex together.
And they call them gender traitors.
Gender traitors, yeah. So
yeah, this is a very anti-abortion, anti-women's rights, anti-LGBTQ society that they live in, and the author does such a good job at showing how quickly this can happen.
Right.
Because one day she goes in to try and buy cigarettes, and her Compu card doesn't work. Or no, it works, right? And she buys a pack of cigarettes from this woman who, like, she's known for years, and they talk a lot, whatever. And they're like, did you hear about the porno marts? Gone. The Feels on Wheels vans and bundle buggies, too.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Okay.
So they start getting rid of all these things. Right. And then the next day, she goes into the same mart, and guess what? Her friend isn't there.
Yeah.
It's a man. And she tries to use her card to buy her cigarettes, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so it was like a matter of hours. The government had taken away all of the rights of women. They fired every single woman was fired from her job. Their Compu cards were taken away, and the money that was in their account was given to either their male husband or their father. Yeah. Or their brother, or if you're a lesbian, no one. Which is what happened to Moira, and she had to like go underground.
Right.
And then they all try to escape to Canada because they realize like shit is hitting the fan. We gotta get the fuck out of here. And they take their 5-year-old to Canada, and they don't let them. They essentially like realize what they're doing. Yeah. And so they speed through the trap or the gate, and then they start running through the woods. This is what happened, at least in my novel. There are no words. It was just pictures. And that's when she gets separated from her husband and her daughter, and they take her away.
I think he gets away.
Okay.
And they're shooting at them, apparently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they catch her and the daughter.
Oh. Okay.
And then she never knows what happens to him, which I can't think of his name right now. Luke.
Or the daughter.
She knows that the daughter was taken.
Yeah. And she doesn't know what happened to Luke. Yeah.
Right. So she's always like
looking for one of the bodies to see if it's Luke. Yeah.
And she, in her head, like she goes, there's like a paragraph in there where she goes back and she says, like, I believe a lot of things. Not everything I believe can be true because they contradict each other.
Right.
So she believes he's dead, but she also believes he's alive and doing well.
Right.
So she, you know, like
she's just trying to survive.
Yeah.
So that's just interesting to me, that how quickly something like that can happen. And, it has happened in the past, like with the Holocaust. Like it's definitely, something that has happened and can happen very quickly. But yeah, so.
And have you seen the show?
Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. I refuse to watch any of it because everyone that watched it was like, you can't handle it.
Yeah, you just said that.
Anyone that knows me is like, no.
This is how forgetful I am. Like, you literally just said this at the beginning, and I'm like, have you watched it?
I think I'm going to have to start, though.
What stuck out to me, like, that I can remember, it obviously they, like, made it modern day happening now.
Oh, yeah. She
went to get her birth control.
Okay.
And they wouldn't fill the prescription until her husband authorized it. Mm-hmm. And that always stuck to me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. So I was waiting to see that in the book. Yeah. Obviously that changed. Yeah. That was like a modern take on what was happening.
Something they changed in the show.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Although they do bring up having birth control, the aunts, and this was tagged in book looks, no woman in her right mind these days would seek to prevent a birth, should she be so lucky as to conceive.
That's right, yeah.
So, and I don't remember what the context was for that. I think it was just the aunts, like, telling them, like, they're lucky to be able to give birth. Right.
That reminds me, the Biden administration approved, I think, I read somewhere that, like, I don't know, I think that Biden administration had something to do with the approval of the first over-the-counter birth control.
Oh, okay.
So, like, right now, if I want birth control, I have to make an appointment with my provider and go get it.
You know what? Yes, I think I heard that.
But now you can just go into the store and get it.
Right. Why do we need a prescription for that?
I don't know. You really shouldn't. But anyway, that's kind of a 5-star story. But speaking of going back to when we were saying Fred's liberal tendencies, do you remember the guard? And they call the guards angels, right?
Nick? Oh, no.
Yeah, Nick.
Nick is his driver, right?
No, he's an angel, I think, isn't he? He's one of, like, the more liberal angels.
Okay.
But yeah, he's Fred's driver or security guard or whatever. Yeah, he does drive Fred around. But anyway, Nick notices of Fred, and so he, like, starts, to, like, say hi to her when he's not supposed to and all that stuff. And then going back to what we were saying about Fred's wife, knowing that Fred was sterile, she arranges for Nick to have sex with Fred. Right. And so, of course, Fred just does whatever they tell her to do. So she ends up having to have sex with Nick, which I think, according to the graphic novel, it turns out to not be such an unpleasant experience for her, because she actually likes him because he's kind to her.
She's been attracted, in the book at least, it shows an attraction to him beforehand, where she, like, even discusses, like, feeling guilty for feeling attracted to him because of Luke.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so, but the wife arranges all of this, but then a few days later, the wife ends up finding her lingerie and realizing that her husband, the commander, had been taking her to the brothel, and she was like, he promised he wouldn't do this again, and it actually is why the first one committed suicide. Right. And so, but he did it, which kind of is really shitty when you realize that the one before her committed suicide and he was treating her the same way. He was, like, taking her to the brothel, playing Scrabble with her.
Because men don't care.
No, all they want is, like, to please themselves.
Not all men, but,
But in this book,
men that do these sort of things don't care.
Yeah, but it's funny because he's the kind of guy that wants to, have his cake and eat it too, if that's the phrase. But so he likes the old days, which is why he goes to the brothel. But at the same time, he's not doing any favors for Fred.
Yeah, no. If you read the story, obviously, right, the people who wanted this society now have it. And they still do things that go against the society. And each of them hide it from each other. Yes. So you have the commanders, the husbands, who are still going to these brothels. And,
But they're the ones that wanted this society. Right. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And now they're bored with it.
Exactly.
You have the wives who supported this because Serena Joy was part of the movement. Yeah. And now she's the one, secretly taking her handmaid to have sex with another man.
Yep. Because she does want a baby.
Yeah.
If she's willing to go to those lengths.
And it's also a social status thing. So I don't know if she really wants it or for her social status. She needs that baby.
Yeah, that's true. It could be the social status thing too.
And then you have the handmaid who has no option.
Right.
And she's the only one that's going to get killed in this situation.
Exactly. It's
so
her
if
life.
she gets caught going to this brothel with him,
she gets killed.
Yes.
If she gets caught having sex with Nick, she gets killed.
Yes. If she gets caught in the commander's office
after hours
playing Scrabble, doing something innocent,
which is what he's making her do.
Right. Like she can't deny him. She's going to get killed.
So that's a really good way to put it. You've got like all these men and women who wanted this society and, they did it, but now they're kind of, being hypocritical about it. And then you've got the other side of the coin where you've got all these people that are trying to rise against it, right? And so that's when you meet of Glenn, who explains the Mayday.
The Mayday.
The Mayday code. And so Mayday is the code word that they use to like see if you're good, if you're on the side of resistance or not. And so
like if someone says Mayday to you and you don't react, you don't know that's a resistance.
But if you do react, then it's like, oh, I'm part of the resistance, right? And so that's how Fred realizes there's a resistance. And can you explain to me what happens, like, because Glenn ends up hanging herself. Does she get caught? And she ends up...
this was after she kicked the guy in the head.
Of Glenn or of Fred?
Of Glenn.
Of Glenn did it. It was kind of hard to know who did what in the graphic novel.
Of Fred. So what happens is whenever they want to keep control. So whenever something happens and someone steps out of the line, that's why there's people hanging on the wall, like a reminder, like this is what happens if you step out of line.
So of Glenn kicked the guy to knock him out to kind of like a mercy kick.
Right. So they brought in this guy who they hung 3 women, two handmaids
and one wife.
And they don't explain why, because she said, we've noticed, this was the aunt saying, we noticed that when we say what the charges are against them, there's a rise in like copycats. So like it encourages more rebellion. So we're not going to tell you what they did,
but we're going to make you watch them.
But we're going to And so like the handmaids show up. The wives are there, the children are there, and they all watch. The men aren't there, right? I don't think for this.
No, it's all.
And so they hang these women, and then they think it's over. But she the aunt starts telling the handmaids to gather close, and so they know something's happening. So they start to gather, and they bring out a man who's been beat up.
I was so afraid it was Luke.
Well, that's what she thought too, right?
Okay, yeah.
But then she said like the build or something was off, and she knew it wasn't him. So they bring him out, and he's like unrecognizable. He's been beat up, and
they call him a rapist.
Yes, the aunt accuses him of raping 2 handmaids brutally.
But
him and another person.
He's just part of the resistance.
And what turns out is that he's part of the resistance, but he's telling the handmaids to like come get your vengeance. Like come. Basically beat the shit out of him. You have like 5 minutes or something, she said, to do whatever you want to him. And so
you gotta remember, some of these handmaids are not part of the resistance, and they are successfully have been brainwashed. Right. And so they are going to beat the shit out of this guy because they're just, when you are sucked into a cult, you just believe what is told to you at this point, and you just sort of play the game.
Exactly. Yeah. And plus, even of Fred was like, she started feeling like the hatred because in her head he raped a woman. Right. So she's like, screw this guy. He deserves to die. And of Glenn, who is like, they have to have like buddies, right? Like whenever they go somewhere, that's her like buddy, partner.
But she kicks him in the face.
But you can't really talk to each other. Or anything, and you don't even look at each other because they have like these blinders on. But they finally figured out that they're cool with each other, and she's already explained the Mayday, so she knows that she's meeting with the commander, and she's like, gather information, let us know,
trying to like plan their escape. Right. Yeah.
So when she sees the guy, she from the back like rushes forward. This is of Glenn. And like brutally kicks him in the head like 5 or 6 times
to make him pass out.
Right. We don't know this at the time, right? So, and then like the women like just go crazy on him, and they walk out. Like some of them are like also bruised because they got hit by accident, and there's like blood everywhere. And she's in the background, kind of like shocked by all this. of Fred. So when she sees of Glenn again, she's like, "What the hell? Like, what was that? What is wrong with you?" And she's like, "You need to calm down." Like, because she started to make a scene. She's like, "You need to calm down. You need to calm down. What I did was a mercy. Like, I knocked him out so he wouldn't feel what was coming. Because they basically killed him."
Yeah. Wow, so he did die. Oh.
Yeah. So she told him he was part of the resistance. He didn't rape anyone. Like, that's a lie.
So she was just like, she must have, the impression I got is that she knew him and she was trying to sacrifice his pain. So then she knew, so of Glenn knew that they were going to come after her next, and so she hung herself because she knew.
Because they mentioned there's like a black van that pulls
with the
up
signal or the symbol of the government. It looks like an eyeball.
When it pulls up for you, it's like you've been caught.
That's it.
So when it pulled up, she knew she was caught, and she
went and hung herself.
Yeah.
So that, I feel like we're kind of fast forwarding a little bit to the end here, but that's okay. I think it all sort of lines up. But the black van ends up coming for Fred.
Yes.
But here's the twist, and tell me if I interpreted this the right way, because there aren't a lot of words in this book.
No.
They're mainly pictures. But the black van pulls up, and she thinks it's for her, and she's like, "This is it," like
she thinks of
because she's a part of the Mayday, so she thinks
this was after Serena caught her with.
Yes.
So she thought Serena turned her in.
She thought Serena turned her in, or of Glenn, or maybe said she was a part of Mayday resistance. Or something
I thought
like
of Glenn had spoken, but then when she realized she hung herself, she said, right. "Oh, she didn't have a chance to rat me out."
Either way, she thought she was gonna die, and so then they come in and it's Nick, and she's like, "Oh, it's Nick," and then Nick walks towards her and whispers in her ear, "It's okay, go with them. It's Mayday." And then so she, in her head, she's just like, they're probably lying to me, but I'm going to choose to believe that, I'm going to be saved or something.
Right.
And then she goes with them, and then she gets in the van, and then that's it.
Yeah. And in the book, Serena Joy, does it show it? Like Serena Joy at the bottom of the stairs?
Yeah, it says, "Bitch, after all he did for you." So she's mad because she had sex with Nick, even though she...
No, I think she's mad.
Yeah, I didn't get it.
Okay, no. See, what happens is they're telling her she's part of the resistance. That's why they're taking her.
Yeah.
And so Serena's like, "You bitch. Like, I was helping you get pregnant. I was trying to, I didn't even turn you in for sleeping with my husband."
But it wasn't her. Yeah, that's right.
So it wasn't her. So that's what she realized is Serena Joy didn't turn her in.
Yeah. But I'm still kind of left with questions about, who turns her in, or whether or not it is Mayday.
Because that's where it ends.
Because that's where it ends, yeah.
I know. I was like, what?
Because she says there have already been purges among them. There will be more. So who's
and she's pregnant at this point, by the way.
Oh, see, the graphic novel.
Does that show that?
It shows that she's starting to billow out a little bit. Yeah.
Because I think at a certain point she tells Nick that she knows she conceived. And that it's his baby.
It would be his, yeah.
And then when they're attacking the guy that supposedly raped someone, she's talking about
see, the graphic novel did not do that. That's interesting. But so now that I have that information, I'm creating my own theory here, in that it is that Nick, because remember how it says not of Fred, but Fred was very, quote, progressive, and he liked the old times and whatever. And so he had Nick, who was also a, quote, progressive angel, or whatever you want to call them. And so now that you told me that information, I'm wondering if Nick wanted to protect her because he was part of the Mayday resistance. This is just me being super optimistic. And she's now pregnant with his baby, and he's maybe, because you could tell throughout the whole book, he liked her.
He liked her, yeah.
Yeah, and so he was always smiling at her and giving her attention, and you could tell he was sort of falling in love with her. So what if he, arranged with his connections to get her out?
Because he knew Serena found out about the sequence.
Yeah. So maybe he used that. But then what's really cool is at the end of the book, it fast forwards to the future after the Galadian society has been defeated.
Right.
And so all they have is this artifact, which is a cassette player. And it's been camouflaged to have 3 songs at the beginning and 3 songs at the end. But in the middle is a woman's voice who we think is of Fred.
Right.
And she tells the whole story, essentially, on this tape. But it says that they use fake names, and they couldn't identify the elusive commander. but they think, the evidence favors Frederick R. Waterford. We know, for instance, that he met his end in one of the earliest purges. He was accused of liberal tendencies, of being in possession of a substantial collection of heretical literary materials, Vogue magazine,
Right.
and of harboring a subversive who was Nick. I think, I don't think it was Fred. I think, most likely this was Nick, who by the evidence of the very existence of the tapes must have helped Offred to escape.
Yeah.
So I think it was a happy ending, but just like The Giver, they leave the ending to the reader to come up with.
And see, I didn't realize I was coming to the end because I've seen the show, so I kind of have an inkling.
Okay.
Obviously, I know it's not going to be the same of what happens after.
Yeah.
So I was like, wait, this is where it ends? Shit.
I know.
I need the other book now.
There's another
There's
one?
another one.
Shut up.
There's a second.
What?
Part two. Yeah.
Does it pick up right where she left off?
I have no idea.
Oh my God. I'm so
assuming.
excited. Oh, wow. I had no idea. Well, yeah, so that was it. We're at 1 hour and 20 minutes. I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think we're good there.
But we do have a couple 5-star stories.
Yes. And I'm going to let you take the lead on that one. I know that we were going to discuss Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, that was the one I wanted to talk about first. So Caitlin Clark is a college basketball player, and she has just recently surpassed the record for points scored for both men and women. So she owns the scoring record. The NCAA, which is the National Collegiate Athletic Association, I'm assuming, for both men and women, which is so cool and something that we should definitely be celebrating in Women's History Month. And there's this post I found on social media that says that when she was a kid, her dad couldn't find a girls' league for her age, so she joined a boys' league and won a state championship. But parents complained that she shouldn't be allowed to play with boys. But now here she is passing the male, the men's basketball player scoring record,
which completely dispels the whole women can't play men's sports.
Yeah,
because look at here, she's doing it.
Yeah, and I love Nike, and I hate corporations and capitalism, but fucking Nike, they have this of course they're capitalizing on this,
right?
But so it says this was never a long shot, and they have her a shot of her shooting, and then it's going across the street into this other billboard, into this
sweet.
This basketball hoop on the other side of the street, which is really cool.
So I've never followed basketball, right? But my daughter decided to join the basketball team this year. So I've somehow, because of that, and just our phones listening to us, I started getting videos of her. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, obviously I don't follow basketball at all, let alone women's basketball. It just didn't occur to me, but just watching her videos, she is so freaking good.
I know, she's amazing.
Yeah, and the first video that popped up for me was her playing. It was at a high school, so I don't know if she was in high school or she was just visiting, and they showed up to her old stomping ground or something. Mm-hmm. But the opposing team had a bunch of guys, and I called them Brads and Chads, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Who were there just to heckle her.
Oh, that's right. And then they got quiet.
Yes, she just kept making 3-pointers, one after
and
another.
And it's so sad that that's the society that we're in, where you have to be just remarkably good at something to shut up the other gender. It's that should never happen. But
exactly.
Thankfully, she shut them up.
And it was a large crowd of them heckling her. But it was so funny because the cameraman was on point. He kept zooming in on them,
funny.
And then she'd make a 3-point and zoom in on them again, and then they progressively got
that
quieter.
Camera person deserves some recognition,
and that is what made me find out who she was. And I started looking up her videos because I was oh, let me show my daughter this because she's badass. And I was oh, she really is badass.
Yeah,
holy crap, she's really good.
Yeah,
and this is amazing.
And because of her, I think the ratings for women's basketball on TV have been at an all-time high.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I was why? And my husband told me that. I was we need to start watching it. And he's we don't have cable. I'm well, let's get cable. Because I don't know how TV works. Apparently, if you want to watch sports, you need cable.
I think you can get just ESPN or something.
Yeah.
Which,
maybe.
honestly, I still have cable, and somehow I have all these not prescriptions. What do you call it? Subscriptions.
Yeah. It all adds up.
Now I think I'm paying like $500 a month.
Well, you know what? You know what you need to do? Just have cereal for dinner.
Oh, duh, yes. Well,
then you can afford all your subscriptions.
On that note, we are boycotting Kellogg's cereal in April.
If you're going to have cereal for dinner, please make it brand name. Or not brand name, generic name. Yeah.
I was like, wait, that's wrong.
So go to Aldi and get you some off-brand Frosted Flakes so that you can have all your subscriptions.
Or you can do General Mills for now.
Oh, yeah.
Because I heard different versions of it. Like, we're going to do Kellogg's first.
Okay.
And then we're going to switch to...
Starting April 1st.
Yeah.
Okay, so April 1st, boycott any Kellogg's products.
Yeah, and they have more than cereal, so you have to be careful.
Yeah.
Because...
And I saw the post too. It was like, this isn't for people who are already doing this because they have to. Like,
right.
So, respect for the people that have already been buying generic brands of cereal.
Right.
But if those of you that are still able to afford Kellogg's, please don't buy them.
Yeah.
Because fuck you and your cereal for dinner.
Well, you get paid millions.
Right. Ugh.
Yeah.
And I saw another thing. It was like, while a McDonald's CEO gets paid $8,672 an hour as they're hiking up McDonald's menu prices.
Right. And they're not going to pay their employees more.
No, of course not.
Another 5-star story I wanted to bring up, you wanted to bring up, but I'm going to take it.
No, go ahead.
France becomes the first country to make abortion a constitutional right.
Woohoo!
So France is now the world's first country to enshrine abortion rights in its constitution.
Way to go, France.
In response to threats to reproductive rights around the world. So, go off, France.
Yeah, that's awesome. We need all the 5-star stories we can get in these times to remind us that shit is getting done, that there are some small victories. And I think the last one for today is a small victory that happened here in Florida, where a federal appeals court rejected restrictions made by Governor Ron DeSantis and Republican lawmakers about race-related issues in the workplace as a part of the Stop Woke Act. So a 3-judge panel basically said, actually, no, I'm going to read it word for word. So they said, quote, "This is not the first era in which Americans have held widely divergent views on important areas of morality, ethics, law, and public policy. And it is not the first time that these disagreements have seemed so important and their airing so dangerous that something had to be done. But now, as before, the First Amendment keeps the government from putting its thumb on the scale." So that's a victory.
Yeah.
We just need to see more of that.
Yes.
Because the DeSantis administration and if this crazy person in North Carolina wins this election season, their agenda is just to keep taking away rights, such as the fake meat.
Oh my God.
And it's like, I'm an American. If I want to eat a soy burger, then goddamn it, I'm going to eat a soy burger.
Right. That makes no sense. Like, Florida is where, woke goes to die and like freedom, we're free here, but we can't eat what we want.
So it's actually not soy. It's fake. It's actually real meat. I shouldn't have said that. So it's real meat, but it's grown in a lab, which I would fucking prefer that to a soy burger. It actually tastes like real beef. And so that's what they're trying to ban that in the state of Florida because, I don't know why, but...
Well, see, we have legislators also who think that, and maybe they think this has something to do with it, that, embryos can be turned into chimeras, or as she said it, chimeras. Chimeras.
Please tell me what a chimera is. Tell our listeners.
It's like a hybrid.
Well, it's like a donkey.
In Greek mythology, it's I believe a lion. With
it's like a hybrid animal.
A hybrid animal of like a lion and a eagle. I think it has wings of some sort.
Oh, okay.
But basically, and it exists in science as well, where you have multiple DNAs.
Oh.
But the way she said it was something about an animal and human DNA crossing. So clearly she meant like a hybrid of between animal and humans. So maybe they're afraid of something like that happening with meat.
I don't know. I think their excuse is like, well, we want to protect our cattle industry and all that. And it's like, do you know how many people want burgers? Like the cattle industry in Florida, I know, is suffering not because of the lab meat is what it's called. It's not fake meat. It's real meat. It's just lab grown real meat. They're not suffering because of that. They're suffering because of all of the development. You're taking away their cattle lands or farmlands, whatever you want to call it. They're putting highways in there, and these huge developmental companies are offering millions of dollars to these cattle farmers for their 100-year-old farm so that they can put a condo complex on it. That's what is, that's what's causing the beef industry to decline, not the lab-grown meat.
But that makes a better story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's be mad at the woke people.
Listen, I love
Don't look over here. It's
hamburgers.
What we're doing.
Like, I will eat a hamburger, whether it was from a real cow or a cow that was grown in a petri dish. But I would prefer the cow in the petri dish because of all of the potentials for climate change.
Right.
Which is something we got to start looking at.
Well, and like things like that happened in this book where we have pesticides and stuff that these animals ingest, and then we don't know what we're putting in our body.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a little scary. I think as long as it's labeled that it's
people are so afraid of lab-grown things, but that's the thing is it does take away the need for pesticides because you don't have to now treat the food that the cow is eating. Which, like you just said, is ingested into the cow and then made into food for us to eat.
Right.
It takes that factor out of it. It makes it safer. It's more affordable. It's greener. It's not something we should be banning.
Yeah.
If you want to ask questions about it, go ahead, but don't outright ban it just because it's different.
That's the thing, because I don't know if I'd eat it.
I would
honestly,
eat it,
like I'd have to see it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to see it
I
first.
just think it's amazing that science has come so far that it can make it hamburger in
Don't
the
take
lab.
the choice away from me, though.
Yeah.
Like, stop taking our choices away.
Yes.
If this is a free country, right? Freedom. Then I should have the ability to say, oh, yeah, I'll give it a try.
Yes. Yeah. But now I don't know where I would love to get my hands on one just so I could tell you what it tastes like. Oh, it tastes just like a regular burger. Which reminds me, have you ever tried Burmese python?
No.
I have.
No. I don't do anything.
I didn't know I was eating it. Okay. So.
Oh my God, don't do that.
I have a crazy friend who, I don't know some people. And, Burmese pythons are invasive species. So people catch them left and right. And so he got like a fucking pound of python meat and with a bunch of like other fish. And he brought it over and he just cooked it all like it was fish.
Oh my God.
And he's like, I got to tell you, this is a mystery one right here. So he told us it was mystery.
And you ate it?
I was like, I'll eat it. And I was like, ooh, it's kind of like earthy.
Chewy?
No, it tasted, the texture was fish. I was like, is this fish? He's like, no, it's not fish. And it was like a weird earthy, like fish. It was like, it didn't make any sense in my mouth. But yeah, it was a Burmese python. So I wouldn't recommend.
I'm not adventurous like that.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Like I know people who do iguanas.
No.
And people who do roadkill.
Oh, no, yeah.
No.
He told me, he was like, it's not roadkill and it's not manatee. And I was like, good. Because if it's manatee, I'm kicking out of my fucking house right now. But
well, the other day, my brother-in-law had us over for soup, right? And they called it, I forgot what it was, lentil soup or like lentil, or was it
beans?
What is the other one that you make? You mash them up and you make
mashed potatoes. You mash up a soup.
I make these all the time. Chickpeas. That's what it was. So I think that's what it was, a chickpea soup, right?
Yeah.
And so when I get there, I see like they serve my husband first, and I see like what looks like tripe, right? Like stomach.
Ugh.
And I was like, what is that? Ugh. And they were like, oh, it's, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Tripe?
It was.
It was, so what is that, like stomach from any animal?
I think it was from a cow or maybe a pig.
So it was tripe soup. It was.
Yes.
It wasn't chickpeas.
And I'm like, that's not what they told me. They told me chickpea soup. So I was
I'd
like,
rather have chickpea soup.
So I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
And then they started like, oh, but you've had it before. I was like, no, I didn't. He's like, yeah, no, I made it before. I just cut it up really small.
Oh, no.
And because I am how I am, I was like, don't you ever do that to me again.
Oh, my God.
Do not hide food and don't tell me what I'm not eating because I'm not down with shit. And I will never eat in this house again.
Yeah. Because it's your right
over.
as an American to know. No, it's your right just as a human to know what the fuck you're eating.
Right. And I looked at my husband, I'm like, did you know? Because I'm like, don't.
And you bet he was like, no, I didn't, I swear.
I tell him all the time, don't ever like try to feed me like deer meat. I don't even like deer meat.
Yeah.
I have tried it, but like,
I've had it. It's not good.
Don't tell me it's something that it's not. Just let me know and let me decide.
Right. I agree. Yeah. So, that's autonomy.
But yeah, gross.
I want to be able to eat what I want to eat.
Yeah.
And not eat what I don't want to eat.
On another note, too, I know shit's about to go down with the books and stuff.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean? It's already going down?
Yes.
Oh, you mean because
But it's starting to backfire on them.
Yeah.
And DeSantis is backtracking now and like saying like, no, we're not banning books. And this is like...
But now isn't he making it like all the principals' responsibility?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they keep passing laws to pass the buck and blame other people.
Yeah. Now they want to blame the principals.
Right. But this is all caused by him. He encouraged Moms for Liberty. So as much as I think he's realized that this is going to affect him because majority of people don't want book bans.
Because he probably wants to run for president again. Because like he can't run for governor again. So what you got to think like what's he going to want to do in the future? He's probably going to want to run for president again.
Oh God,
yeah.
I don't know. He got an ass whooping.
I know, but I bet you that's what he's gearing up for because he was second, technically, like for a little while he was second. So like, I bet that's what he's still because unfortunately he's not going anywhere. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. But yeah, so just be mindful. The book bans. He was behind it.
100%.
He cannot backtrack.
Yeah.
And
we remember.
And as much as Moms for Liberty would like to say, like, oh, we speak for mothers, I think in their 60-minute episode they mentioned, or afterwards on Twitter, that they represent like 100,000 or 100 million. Someone pointed out it was 0.001%
of course
of women.
And of course they have so much power.
Yes.
It's just so unfair.
So don't let them fool you into thinking they're the majority. They absolutely are not. So on that note, don't ban books.
Ban bigots.
This episode has been engineered and mixed by your hosts, Jennifer Mendoza and Courtney Green.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to follow us at MILF for Books. That's MILF, the number 4, books, on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, and X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it.
And don't forget to help the show by rating us wherever you get your podcasts.